أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله تعالى عن سادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Samira and Khadija. Alhamdulillah. Yesterday, we entered into the next section of this blessed book, Watheeqat ul-Ikhwaan, and the Shaykh was talking about the necessity of avoiding evil scholars. And we ended off with this, at this part right here, when he said, "Oh, my brothers, do not sit with the evil scholars." So the Shaykh is given instructions. Do not sit with evil scholars. A lot of times we don't look at things in the right way. For a lot of times, a lot of this stuff is just entertainment for a lot of us, and we don't take it seriously. But you have to remember, if you go back to our Akhdari classes, our Maliki fiqh classes, in the beginning of the book, Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Akhdari was talking about, amongst other things, the necessity of protecting your limbs. And one of those limbs that it is necessary to protect is the ears. Anything that's haram for us to do is likewise haram for us to hear about it. Unless, of course, there's some specific necessity or situation, right? One of the dangers of not protecting the limbs, in this case, we're talking about the ears, is because what you take into your ears, the things you hear, will end up at your heart. You have to look at your eyes and your ears and your stomach and all of these other things as pathways in which things from the outside travel into your heart or to your heart. So the way, you know how, they say in this society, the way to a man's heart is to his stomach, or the way to anybody's heart is to their stomach. Also, a way to their heart is to their ears. And also a way to their heart is through their eyes and other things, right? And so we have to protect our hearts from being influenced and affected by things. And so when we continue to take in information from these bad sources, from these sources that don't necessarily care about Islam or these other things, it's going to affect our hearts. That's why it is important that when we get plugged into proper Islam, known as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, we have to start also protecting our ears and our eyes from the influence. In other words, if you're talking about someone that's been addicted to a substance, in other words, you have to go cold turkey. You have to quit it cold turkey. So we have to stop finding excuses to letting these evil scholars and their bad information or their neglect of pertinent information or their recontextualization of true information. We have to be mindful, and we have to protect our hearts from that. And the way we protect our hearts from that is by not listening to that stuff. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hakeem, Imad, Teresa, Baron, Nadim, Nadira, Abu Yumi, and Rahim. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad you're here. And this is how a lot of us get caught up. And Farouk, alhamdulillah. This is how a lot of us get caught up. And a lot of us end up still plugged in and influenced by a lot of these evil scholars. And keep in mind, yes, he's talking about evil scholars, but in our conversation, we're even talking about non-scholars. People that wouldn't Islamically technically be considered a scholar, but if he's teaching or he's preaching or whatever, this applies to him or her as well. A lot of us, for example, we listen to some of these evil scholars. We know they have a corrupt creed or a corrupt belief, or a belief that's in opposition to Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaat. And so we say this is our way of justifying to continue listening to them. We say, oh, well, he talks or she talks about some other things too. I'm not going to listen to their lecture or their talk on Aqidah or Tawheed, but he has a good class on marriage, or he has a good class, on social issues, or she has a good series on polygyny, or some other thing that we think is completely disconnected from their bad belief or the thing that makes them an evil scholar. And you have to understand that listening or sitting with people like this, it's like they used to say. I'm sure they got new terminology for it now, but back when I was like younger, because I actually had an aunt. She's technically my cousin, my mother's cousin. She went to a bar. Like, she used to always walk around, like walking everywhere. Like, I'm from New York City, and in Queens, like, you hear about Bellevue, like the mental hospital. In Queens, they have one called Creedmoor, right? It's almost like going towards Long Island, right? And I had my cousin, or my aunt, my mother's cousin, right? That was a resident of Creedmoor. Like, why is she there? And whenever I used to see her, she would just be walking around like she was on Thorazine. I don't know if y'all know what that is, but when I was locked up, there was, especially in the max prisons I was in, some of the prisoners, the officials would put them on Thorazine. And a lot of times these were people they can't control. A lot of them was radicals from the 70s. And so they forced them to take this Thorazine. And they'll have you're not crazy, you're not retarded, you're not slow, but it slows down all of your motor skills. And you just be like, almost like a zombie. And sometimes, and I remember one time we was in Chow in the mess hall, and this one brother there let him out of the box, but he was still on that medicine. And we sitting down talking, and he's talking and spit is coming down his mouth. And he's like, pardon me, brothers. He's talking real slow. He's not even talking as fast as I'm talking. But he was like, pardon me, brothers, they still got me on this medicine, and because he's stuff coming all out and spitting down his face and everything like that. And that's what they would do a lot of times to people who they couldn't control, who they couldn't shut down, who they couldn't pump fear into, right? And so my cousin Debbie I would see her walking around like that, just like. And when she would talk very slow, right? And she's not crazy, but what happened to her in her situation is she went to a club or a bar or something, and they put what we used to call, back when I was younger, they put a Mickey in her drink. What they call a roofie or whatever. And sometimes these stuff mess you up. They don't just make you lose your inhibitions and you sleep with someone that you wouldn't normally want to sleep with. Sometimes these things chemically mess you up and you won't be right for the rest of your life. She's one example of that. So even though, alhamdulillah, we Muslims, we don't go to clubs, we don't parties, but be careful who you have, exposed to your food and your drink and stuff. Right? Somebody might put something in that. You got to be careful. We don't go to sleep just because we Muslim. I'm Muslim, bad stuff don't happen to me. No, you got to be careful. right? But they put a Mickey in her drink. And sitting with these evil scholars is the same way. They'll put a Mickey, you know, in your belief system. You'll be sitting with them learning, you know, conversational Arabic for a second, right? And you like, you know, alhamdulillah, you know, this is Arabic, this is neutral, right? I'm throwing a hint out to one of my sisters who's listening. She don't have to reveal herself, right? But you'll be learning a conversational Arabic class, and then you, in the middle of the lesson, you think it's nothing. Okay, it's safe. It's nothing about Akida. And then in the middle of the class, and I've seen this, and it's in children's books and everything. Ain't Allah. Where's Allah? Like, whoa! I thought this was an Arabic class. You're gonna push that stuff on us? Right? And then the answer will be fi sama, you know, in the heavens, like subhanallah. I've seen it over and over again. So like you can't trust these people. You gotta watch them. Like, you know, our Imam Asim says, I love it what he says. He's like, you gotta watch these jokers. Right? You gotta watch them. You can't sleep on these guys. They'll put that Mickey in everything. Not just when they talking about Akida, but when they talking about things you think have no relation to Akida, they'll slip it right in there. Basic Arabic, being taught to children. Where's Allah? SubhanAllah. We take from this dunya, what we take from this dunya should be our provision in the akhirah. In other words, take the good and leave the bad. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Isa. Alhamdulillah. You must be at Mr. Charlie. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zakaria. Yes, Teresa knows. Have them doped up. And so that's deep. Issa said that's deep. I was just listening to the Usuluddin class where you were talking about this. You know what happened to me over the last couple of months that I found is weird and it's kind of creepy as well. You know, I'm not a flashy dresser or fly dresser, anything like that. If you're looking for somebody that dress good, you gotta go somebody else. That's not me. That's not my thing, right? But you know what? I remember it happened a couple of times, real recently. I'll wear something, right? On Juma, for example. One time it was a Juma. And then I'll go on my Facebook, and then it will say, you know, memories from last year. And Juma would fall exactly a year ago, and I had on the same thobe. I'm like, subhanAllah, this happened more than once. I forgot what the other scenario was, but it happened like a month ago. I was wearing something, I don't think it was a Juma, but then I got on Facebook, memory from a year ago. A year ago, I was wearing the same thing I was wearing that day. I'm like, yo, this is kind of creepy here. Hold on, wait a minute. Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Malika and Ahmed. So don't sleep on what the Sheikh is saying. Don't sit with them because that's poison. It's poison. It's one thing, like, because as Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we know in fiqh issues there are general differences of opinion. We're not talking about all that because it's all acceptable. It's all under, you know, Ahlus Sunnah. It's all under the umbrella of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. There's many issues, especially with regards to the details of fiqh, where there's going to be differences. That's no problem. Because all of these things can be traced back to the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who ultimately took these positions from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. So we're not talking about that. But these issues where it's clearly no difference of opinion, is just some stuff is right and some stuff is wrong, and some stuff is just corruption. Like, you have to protect yourself from those influences. And, you know, a lot of times, like we were mentioning yesterday, you know, a lot of us, we still hold on because we say, okay, I'm just not going to listen to that bad thing. But they will slip that corruption in there, seen all the time. And most of us, we're not at the level where we can distinguish. Oh, he just said that right there. I ain't even gonna pay no attention to that. That's wrong. Keep going. A lot of us, we're not at the level where we can distinguish. Like, for example, sometimes, I get a piece of beneficial information from a place, and I will never make it known publicly where I got that information from, because most of us don't know how to say, like y'all been saying, take the good and leave the rest. Some people be like, oh, Imam Naeem, he posted a quote from such and such. And so they trust me. So they think, oh, okay, so that source must be good. And so they'll go directly to that source and trust everything that person says or whatever. When I just quoted one thing, I didn't mean you to start following him and liking him and everything that they say is good. And I know a lot of us are like this. So it's for that reason that I don't do that. If I can't co-sign the source, even though I personally got benefit out of one thing that they said, I'm not going to put that quote up there for everybody, because people don't know where to stop at. I'm just quoting one thing, and that's that. That's one of the reasons why I may hear something beneficial from a clearly, pseudo-Islamic group or sect that's un-Islamic, but they may say one thing that's good about politics or black people. I'm not quoting that, because a lot of us don't have basic Islam. We don't know where to stop. We'll just keep going. Well, so Imam Naeem, he co-signs him. He posted a quote from him. So let me see what else he's saying. So I don't do that. That's the reason why I don't do that. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hassan Ali, the free slave, Abdul Kareem. Alhamdulillah. Glad you're here. So the Sheikh said, do not sit with the evil scholars, the people of heedlessness, the helpers of shaitan. They are the deputies of Iblis in corruption. So that's where we stopped at yesterday. So let's pick up. وهم الذين يأخذون في كل بدعة حرص متاع الدنيا. قال تعالى: قل متاع الدنيا قليل والآخرة خير لمن اتقى. ألم تر إلى قوله تعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن كثيرا من الأحبار والرهبان لا يأكلون أموال الناس بالباطل ويصدون عن سبيل الله. They are those who boldly engross themselves in we're on page 51, anybody, and boast themselves in every innovation, thirsty after the gratification of this world. So the Sheikh is telling us what the ultimate intention is. A lot of times these evil scholars, they're motivated by the dunya. They want something in the dunya, some money, some wealth, some position, some fame, some power, and their religious judgments and what comes out of their mouth and what they teach is reflective of that. That's the ultimate goal. He, the Most High, says, say, short is the enjoyment of this world. The hereafter is best for those who do right. And this is Surah Nisa, which is chapter number 4, verse number 77. And this is why we always have to be careful about why we are learning. We have to be careful about that. This is one of the first things I noticed that stood out to me when Imam Amin introduced us to Sheikh Walid al-Rifai. May Allah preserve both of them. That Sheikh Walid would always say, renew your intentions before class. Renew your intentions. I never heard nobody say that much. Renew your intentions. Renew your intentions. Renew your intentions. In other words, don't get stuck on robot mode. Your intention may have started, for the right purpose, for the right intentions, but after a while, your intentions may have changed. So that's a reminder to renew. You just did revive your intention. I'm seeking knowledge to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to fulfill my obligations or whatever those intentions are. Now think about it. Some people go overseas to study so they can come back and get a job, so they can make money. so they can be super da'i, so that they can debate with people. All of these things are blameworthy intentions. There's nothing wrong with having a job to teach, but that shouldn't be the purpose that you learning it for, because you're going to have to teach it anyway. If you learning it, you're going to have to teach at least the basics to your family, and you got to do that for free, right? And so when your family gets the basics and you're past the basics, you have to keep teaching them. And so when you do things for money, when you learn this deen and you start teaching it for the sole purpose of making money, and then feasibility someplace else in the background, an afterthought, then, it ain't feasibility. Because if they pull back the money, you're going to start tailoring and, omitting what you should be teaching and being hush-hush about certain things, and even teaching certain things that ain't true. There's a whole bunch of imams around this country who are the ones who get paid well, not us, not us, right? But a bunch of imams that get paid around the country who actively teach things that they don't believe. I need you to think about that. There's imams who are getting paid well. They learn, for example, classical, traditional, Ahl Sunnah Islam. But the board controls the masjid that they work at. Most of the time, these board members, most of them are just professionals. They're engineers, they're physicians, they're professionals. Most of them aren't trained, even at a basic level, on Islam. And they are telling the professional imam, the student of knowledge, the scholar that they hired, what to teach and what not to teach. And sometimes the truth, they can't teach it because they will get fired. And some of them keep their job. It's like it's the fork in the road. It's a crisis. It's a morality crisis they're in. They're like, man, they pay for this car, they pay for this house, I get medical benefits, I got insurance, they pay me well, I'm actually getting paid to do what I love to do, to learn, study, and teach. But I can't teach the truth on this issue, that issue, and that issue because, the board may write me up and it may ultimately fire me. And usually what I see now, it's sad because this is not something that just started happening 5 years ago. This is proverbial since the immigrant community got their weight up and their elders graduated from university and they become professionals and they've established themselves and able to open up their own masajid. And this has been their thing. They hire imams, and they fire them. Some of them change imams almost like they change in underwear. And this is normal. So it's not like it's new, right? So a lot of people that's, getting imam jobs now, if their eyes are open, this stuff is not new. They know what they're walking into. They're walking into it with their eyes wide open. And some of them do it and they bend over for so long until sometimes they reach their breaking point. And then a lot of times they snap out, right? They snap out and then, they go to the other extreme and they start attacking everyone on the board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they knew what they were getting into when they first started. And I think this is sad because when you have someone that studied all that time and put in all of that work just to come back and not be able to teach what they learned, it's my opinion that those people who are better learn should establish their own institutions that's based upon what they've learned. But a lot of teachers, they don't want to get involved with the administrative part of running a community. They just want to get in and teach. And hey, that's something that you gotta face facts. It's not a whole bunch of people like you running these boards. So if you're really sincere about teaching what you learn, you have to start your own institutions. And that involves being part of the administration, right? You don't want to deal with paying bills and making all those type of decisions. You just want to teach. Well, that's not our reality in the United States. If you want to be Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and that's the way he was trained, right? It's not too many people, it's not too many administrations that run masjids that's going to facilitate that in this country. You're going to have to build your own. And if you think about it, that's exactly what scholars like the Shehu, the author whose books we're reading, and those who came before him had to do. Prior to the fall of the Songhai Empire, the Songhai Khilafate. The Songhai Khilafate is one of the most famous amirs or caliphs of the Songhai Khilafate was Askia Muhammad Torre. Right? This is, Timbuktu and all of that. That was an Islamic emirate. All these, or Khilafate. All of these Afrocentric people hate Islam, but, they always talk about Songhai, Mali, Timbuktu. Well, that's Islam, right? That's Islam and Muslims. When Timbuktu fell, when it was invaded by the Portuguese and the Moroccans in about 1591, that broke down the security of Black Africa. And if you notice, that's when the slave trade kicked up because there was no defense. You tore down the Africa's natural defense system, right? And so after that point in time, it just became chaos. There's no order, there's no law, right? And so all these little different municipalities popped up, and so people got corrupt. And so you have kings and amirs and stuff that's ruling, but they just corrupt. And they Muslim in name only, but they're not really governing according to Islam. And so at a certain point, the scholars themselves, who prior to that time, they were just advisors to the rulers. They would advise the ruler on this. The rulers would seek advice to them. Okay, what should I do in this situation? And then the scholar would give them advice based upon the Quran and the Sunnah and the Sharia. But at a time, they got so corrupt. They got so corrupt that the scholar said, this is a waste of time. We need to take the government ourselves. And so the scholars began rising up and taking control of the government. That's exactly what Sheikh Usman Dan Fodio did during his time. I mean, the governors and the rulers and all of these people, they claim to be Muslim. It wasn't like he was like, and his Jamaat was like the first Muslims in the area. Islam was established there hundreds of years before the Sheikh. But these cats was corrupt. These guys would, they would, pray Juma, pray Eid, and then sacrifice an animal to a pagan god at night. That was like a proverbial saying. They claim to be Muslim, but they were just doing what everybody else was doing. And then, a lot of them was complicit, with the traders. It was a network out there. And so, this is during the time of the slave trade. Some of these Muslim rulers had contracts and was selling, black people to the Europeans as slaves. And the Shehu and his family, they wrote against it and they fought against them for doing that. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Kashif and Minar. Alhamdulillah. So they had to take control of the government themselves. Well, like on a smaller level, our scholars have to do the same thing. You just teaching and advising people in your masjid, they ain't working. They're not listening to you. You just shut up and you lead the salat and you shut up again and give the Jummah khutbah. You bet not say nothing wrong either. And then you shut up and you lead the Jummah prayer. And then you shut up and you do this wedding. And you shut up and you do this akika. And you shut up. You bet not say nothing political. And just shut up until we tell you to talk. And just in case you didn't hear what we said before, just shut up some more. Right? That's their job. They glorify janitors. You got all that knowledge in their head. Can't teach it. Well, the way in order to do that is you have to, sad to say, you have to become not only the scholar, but you have to be an administrator. You have to set up your own masajid and institutions where there is going to be compliant and is going to be a manifestation of what you learn. Yeah, I mean, you can't depend on them to do it. They don't care about the deen. They're real pragmatic people. You know, if it's pragmatic for us, it's real pragmatic and makes it real simple for us to go by calculations. We don't care. We know the hadith says begin sighting the moon, begin fast when you see it and all that kind of, we hear all that. But the Eid is a recognized holiday, and we need to tell these people when the Eid is going to be, so we can do that 5 years in advance by calculating. So we don't want to hear nothing about sighting the moon. We don't care what you learned in your madrasa, in your school, and you better not teach it in the masjid either. You better tell people a week before Ramadan starts when Ramadan is going to start, so we can know when to tell our people that we need off, right? So all of these issues they have to keep quiet on, even though their Islamic teaching goes against what they're being forced to teach in their masjid. And in order to do this dawah, everything ain't always easy. You're gonna have to do things the hard way if you really care about Allah and His Messenger. And they always move the goalposts. They trick you and they're thinking, oh, you won't have to compromise that much. They're good with traditional Islam, whatever. And then a little bit here. We know that, and you probably want us to cite the moon for Ramadan, right? But we've been doing it like this. We connected with ISNA, I mean, it doesn't make you a kafir for calculating, right? So how about we just be quiet on that issue and, just announce that Ramadan is going to start this day. Then it's that. Then it's Eid. Then it's Eid al-Adha. And then it's, the alphabet soup. We have this politician that's coming, right? And he's going to be talking about such and such and so and so. I know he supports the alphabet soup and it goes against Islam, but we don't want you to deal with politics. That's our business. We just want you to open up the program with some Quranic recitation. That's it. It's right there. You don't have to co-sign everything that this politician says. Just open up with Fatiha. That's it. Or recite some Quran, right? And then just sit there and shut up, right? Right? And it's always on and on and on and on and on. They keep telling you, just look, okay, we know this goes against the teaching of what you learned about Islam, but we live here and we have to compromise and we have to do what we have to do to get by. And so, you go on and on and on and on and on. And then until somebody catches a video of you compromising so much and they put you on blast, right? And then you can't even defend yourself because you part of the masjid, you probably got some type of non-disclosure agreement and you can't show any, parting of ways between you and the administration. It's crazy. But you should have enough common sense, right? You knew what you was getting into before you got into it, but you chose to get into it. Why? Because money. So don't even go into it. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's just a slow walk. Slow walk. SubhanAllah, Saudi has a lot to do with some communities compromising the Sunnah and the Sharia. Sometimes, but most of these communities now, they're really like independent. It ain't like it used to be 10, 20 years ago, right? I even had the local Wahhabi community tell a couple of people, they say, hey, you know what Imam Naeem and Master Mu'min is doing is really, closer to the Sunnah, even than what we doing, right? And a couple of brothers came back and told me, hey, so-and-so, they said what you doing is close to the Sunnah. I'm like, whoop-de-doo, so what? like that, coming from them, that's no compliment, right? They bash us every day. One compliment ain't going to make up for all of that. And even if you look at most of their scholars, right? The big ones, I don't want to misquote anyone, but I have it in books we've written about it, right? Like about sighting the moon and stuff, right? We did this book a long time ago. I just so happen to have it on my desk, right? We quote some Wahhabi scholars in here, right? Where they tell them to follow your own sighting in your own locality, right? These Wahhabis don't do that. They follow Saudi, even when these scholars was alive. They're like, okay, yeah, we should follow the sighting from the country that we in. All right, sure, whatever, right? All of them posts. The committee of senior scholars said Ramadan starts this day, following Saudi, right? So then they don't even follow their own things, right? But alhamdulillah, the interesting thing is they seem to make these policies with no pressure from non-Muslims. Exactly. It's like what Carter G. Woodson talked about. He didn't use this term, but he's talking about the house Negro. How the house Negro will be directed. I forgot the exact quote, but to cut his own door in the back without even being told to by the slave master. I beat the quote all up. I didn't even quote the quote 10% right. But if you're familiar with the miseducation of the Negro, you're familiar with the quote, right? Yeah, no pressure from the disbelievers, none. I remember I was sitting in a meeting. It was like an interfaith type of meeting, and it was at one of the larger masjids. There were some city officials, leaders from the Muslim community. I think there were some Jewish leaders there, Christian leaders. The Nation of Islam was there too. And the brother who's running the meeting, right? I remember we're in the masjid. We're in the masjid. I think it was time for Dhuhr. Yeah, it had to be Dhuhr. So the muezzin is calling the adhan. It's on the microphone. You can hear the adhan everywhere. And so one of the Christian leaders stopped, oh, it's time for your prayer. You want to pray? Do you know the brother who was running the meeting was like, no, we don't need to pray. We good. We keep going. I'm sitting there like, oh, hell no. Ain't no way I'm going to miss the prayer while I'm in the masjid and hear the adhan. Hell no, right? And so I'm sitting here, right? How should I do this? The easy way or the hard way? Should I put him on blast in front of all these disbelievers? Like, what's wrong with you? You can, what? Right? And so I said, you know what? I ain't going to go that way. So I waited a couple of minutes. And I said, excuse me. And I got up, went to the bathroom, made wudu. And when I was in the bathroom making wudu, one of the presidents from the masjid was in the bathroom making wudu too. He was like, and we looked at each other and laughed. He was like, we ain't missing no salat, right? So we made salat. But this is how these people think. You are in the masjid. You hear the adhan, right? You're running the meeting, and you still going to compromise your deen. This way these people think. How you going to work with somebody like that? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Imari and Ismail, alhamdulillah. I didn't blast them. I thought about blasting them. But I know I wasn't going to miss that prayer, though, in the masjid. Like, what excuse am I going to have? But anyway, so this is important right here. Have you not seen the words of the Most High, O you who believe? Verily, many among the priests and rabbis devour the wealth of people unjustly and bar people from the way of Allah. This is a very important ayat. This footnote number 60. This is Surah Tawbah, verse number 34. Y'all need to write that down. It's very important with regards to this subject. What is meant by bar people from the way of Allah and Sabilillah in this ayat is that the aforementioned groups of people actually deter the common people away from the deen of Allah, in spite of the fact that they claim to be representatives of the faith. They also mix truth with falsehood and pretend in front of their ignorant followers that they are actually inviting to righteousness. The truth of the matter is that they are callers to the hellfire, and they will not find any helpers on the day of resurrection. This is important. Why? Because what the Sheikh is about to go into here, he went into in more details in other books, and he's about to quote where he's getting this inspiration from, right? In other books, like his book Watheeqat ul-Ikhwaan, like the light, the blazing light of the brothers, right? A lot of books with the name Ikhwaan on it. This is Watheeqat ul-Ikhwaan. So wait a minute. The verse is not talking about Muslims. The verse is talking about Jews and Christians, because Allah says, "O you who believe, verily many among the priests," right? What's a priest? The Christian leader, and the rabbis, Jewish leader, devour the wealth of people unjustly, dunya, about money, and block people from the way of Allah, yansuduna an sabilillah, and block people from the way of Allah. Take their money, they out, they hustling. Their religious knowledge and their piety that's on display is a hustle. It's a way for them to earn income, and they block people from the way of Allah. It's not like they making money but they still helping you to get to Allah. No, they blocking you to get from getting to Allah. So you may say, okay, but this verse is talking about the Jews and the Christians. What they got to do with Muslims? How can you say Muslims are doing that? This is the connection for you. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَتَتَّبَعُونَ سُنَنَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ شِبْرًا بِشِبْرًا وَذِرَاعًا بِذِرَاعٍ حَتَّى لَا دَخَلُوا فِي جُحْرِ دَبٍّ تَبِعْتُمُوهُمْ قِيلَ أَيَهُودُ وَنَصَارَى قَالَ فَمَنْ. It is narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri and others, that the Prophet ﷺ said, you will definitely follow the sunnah, the ways of those who came before you, step by step, and inch by inch, to such an extent that if one of them went into a lizard's hole, you would follow them. You would definitely follow them into it. Then the Prophet ﷺ was asked, are you talking about the Jews and the Christians? And he said, who else? In other words, who else would I be talking about? So we learn from this hadith and other hadith that if the Christians and Jews did something, somebody from some group from the Muslim Ummah will do the exact same thing. And you don't believe me? Do your own research. Look at any issue where a large segment of the Muslim Ummah has strayed away from what the Prophet ﷺ brought regarding that issue, right? And then look at it historically. You will find, without exception, that in every issue that we go astray on, you look back at the Jewish and the Christian community, their people didn't start out like that, but they went astray the same way, in the same fashion, including calculations. Yes, because I mentioned moon sighting earlier, including calculation. You know, they're supposed to follow the lunar calendar too. The reason they started calculating and following the set calendar is because they were occupied and conquered by the Romans. And so they abandoned their lunar calendar. So we're not the first one to do that. This is Surah 9, verse number 34. So whenever we read in the Quran and the Sunnah something bad about Jews and Christians, we should not get arrogant. We shouldn't look at it as an opportunity to call names and get arrogant. No. We should look at that as a warning that someone from my ummah, meaning the Prophet ﷺ's ummah, is going to do the same thing. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that what afflicted my Bani Israel, the same thing will afflict my ummah. And he used the phrase na'al bi na'al, like the way one sandal resembles another sandal. It was deep because I heard one sheikh, the way he explained it. He said, when you look at shoes or sandals, right, you know, they don't look the same because for the big toe, right, the big toe is in the middle. Like on your right foot, the big toe is onto the left. And on the left foot, the big toe is to the right. So they're not exactly the same. But when you put them together, they line up evenly, right? And the Prophet ﷺ used that phrase, na'al bin na'al. He said, even if one of them went to their mother, with lust, etc. I don't need to be explicit, right? Someone from my ummah will do the same thing. It's a sound hadith. So we shouldn't be like, oh, look at them Christians and Jews. No, we should be like, whoa, they did that. Ugh. It's coming. Somebody from my ummah is going to do the same thing. So you understand, somebody from the former ummah, the former nations does it or did it. It's going to be a group from this ummah that does it. Now go back to the verse. Or you believe, verily many rabbis and many monks, they block people from the way of Allah. I mean, they devour people's wealth unjustly, and they block people from the way of Allah. So the leaders, the scholars amongst the Jews and the Christians, they was about money, they was about bread, and they blocking people. They actually was a hindrance, there was a barrier, there was an impediment to people getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're going to find many scholars and religious leaders from this ummah doing the same thing. So the Shaykh, he continued, he said, Qala Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim ibn Muhammad al-Maghili التلمساني إن كثيرا من العلماء هذه الأمة وأبادهم يأكلون أموال الناس بباطل ويصدون عن سبيل الله وبسبب هؤلاء العلماء والأباد شاع الفساد في جميع البلاد. Muhammad ibn Abdul Karim ibn Muhammad al-Maghili at-Tilmisani said, verily many of the scholars of this community and their worshippers devour the wealth of people unjustly and block people from the way of Allah. It is because of these scholars and worshippers that corruption has filled the land. These scholars and worshippers. It's because of them that corruption and has filled the land. Common people are going to do what they're going to do, but it is the scholars and the ubad, the ignorant worshippers who follow these scholars, that provide religious cover, justification for their fasad. Malika said, oh wow, they have a building and the teachings of Muhammad Maghili at-Tilmisani in Nigeria. Oh, he was highly respected in Nigeria, and he's from North Africa. He's so important that we dedicated an appendix to him. We teach you a little bit more about him. The Shaykh who had a lot of respect for him. We are page 81 now. We're going to read his biography. Muhammad al-Maghili at-Tilmisani. We have decided to dedicate a little more than a footnote for this respected scholar, because the Shaykh spoke so highly of him and quoted him frequently. His date of birth has not been recorded, but he was most likely born sometime between 1425 and 1440. Obviously, this is the Christian calendar, the common era calendar, like 2021, same calendar, right? This is not a Hijra calendar, right? Because right now it's 1442 Hijra calendar. Al-Maghili was his nisbah, as his nisbah suggests, connects him to the Berber tribe of Maghila. Tilmisan was an ancient city in central Maghreb, meaning modern-day Algeria. Wa alaikum salam, Adam. Ahmed Muhammad Kani, in his book, The Intellectual Origin of Islamic Jihad in Nigeria, said, Al-Maghili was of North African origin and renowned for his piety and scholarship. Many of his works were said to have been widely circulated since the 16th century, meaning the 1500s, in both North and West Africa. Al-Maghili was very radical and militant in matters relating to belief and unbelief, syncretism, and condoning anti-Islamic customs. You have to understand, in this context, when you talk about radical and extreme, I don't want you thinking like radical terrorism, nothing. No, 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 no. I want you to think in terms of the Quran and the Sunnah and Islam, proper Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat is normal, right? That's normal. And everything to the right of it is extreme, and everything to the left of it is extreme. And sometimes the status quo isn't consistent with Islam. Sometimes it goes too far to the right, sometimes it goes too far to the left. And so when you trying to bring things back to the center, you are seen as being extreme. You extreme according to their standards, but not extreme according to Islamic standards. So this is what's being spoken about here. These extremely radical ideas aroused great controversy among the Muslim scholars of North Africa, the majority of whom opposed them. As a result of the conflict with his contemporary scholars, he moved to Fez in Morocco, and there too his ideas failed to find fertile soil to grow in. He was forced by certain political circumstances to move to Bilad al-Sudan, Black Africa, where he succeeded in disseminating his radical views. This is a quote, by the way, from that book. Al-Maghili first visited Air and then successively Takeda, Kano, that's in Nigeria, Katsina, Nigeria, and Gao, I think that's in Mali still. While in Air, he was said to have built a masjid and also preached to the inhabitants of the region. In Takeda, he was interviewed by the ruler and there taught the Quranic sciences. He next went to Kano, where he was warmly received by his ruler, Muhammad Wunfa, who ruled from between 1493 and 1499. It was at the latter's request that al-Maghili wrote his famous treatise on statecraft or government, addressed to sovereigns, addressed to rulers. Tajuddin Fima Yajib ala al-Muluk. He also dedicated Jumlat al-Muqtasara to him. So these are books that the Sheikh Muhammad al-Maghili wrote to and for the benefit of the Amir of Kano. In 1498, al-Maghili visited Gayo, where he exercised considerable influence on the political affairs of the state. His book, Ajwiba As'ila Askiya, was written in reply to the questions put to him by Askiya al-Hajj Muhammad Torre, the famous ruler of Songhai Empire. He's the famous one who made Hajj from Songhai. He actually stopped in Egypt and he met with and talked to Imam Suyuti, the famous Imam Suyuti, right? And they seen how much power and stuff that he came through with. He was named by the authorities Amirul Mu'minin fi Bilad al-Sudan, the commander of the believers in Black Africa. Because you got to understand, Black Africa is so far away from everything else that's going on in what we now know called the Middle East. The Umayyad, the Abbasid Empire, and then the Ottomans. They so far away that they people never even tried to bring them under their control. They always been independent, and that's also by mandate of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But that's a different topic. When you examine the letter that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wrote to Najashi, the Ethiopian king, and other hadith along with that letter, you understand that it was always the intention and the purpose and the purview of Black people in Islam to have some level of autonomy, some level of independence. And when we stop doing that, you see what we see right now. But that's a whole nother topic. In contrast to North Africa, al-Maghili's revolutionary ideas were received in West Africa with great enthusiasm. He was held in high esteem by the rulers of Kano and Songhai, and on many occasions acted as legal and political advisor to them. Moreover, he was asked to give verdicts and to write on how best a ruler could administer his state. His ideas have been a source of inspiration and guidance for many generations to the extent that by the 19th century, they had been fully assimilated and were being applied. Al-Maghili's views, expounded in his book, Ajriba As'ila Askiya, on fighting against tyrannical rulers and dissenters were accepted by the Sheikh in full, meaning Sheikh Uthman bin Fodio, in full, and by him in his work Siraj al-Ikhwaan. Also, al-Maghili's statement on the duties of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, are quoted in the same work. On the justification for the jihad in Hausaland, al-Maghili's works were considered by the Sheikh as his main sources. Hausaland is like basically modern day Nigeria. The Shehu drew a parallel between the political and social conditions of 19th century Hausaland and 16th century Songhai. In sum, we can say that on matters relating to the political and social conditions and the state of belief in Bilad al-Sudan, and on the obligation to fight tyrannical rulers and dissenters, and those dealing with misguided ulama, the views of al-Maghili were a major source for the views of Sheikh Uthman. Sheikh al-Maghili is reported to have died sometime between 1503 and 1505. May Allah have mercy on him and elevate his rank. So that's who the Shehu is quoting here. So you can't look at these evil scholars as not, it's one thing to be out, just for money and everything, but they're actually an impediment. They're actually a hindrance for the common people. Because number one, Islam is supposed to be made clear. In other words, the job of the scholar is to make Islam clear so that the common people can practice it without any confusion or anything like that. The scholars, they don't do that. They just make things more complicated, and they justify. They give Islamic cover for corruption in the land, and really, their job is to support whoever's in charge. Right? That's why they're scholars. They call them scholars for dollars or government scholars. So we're going to pause right there for today. Are there any questions? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ain't no power outage, man. You just late. Just admit it, sister. Well, it's a power outage. Ain't no power outage. We in the same neighborhood. Ain't no power outage. Did you pay your electric bill? Alhamdulillah. I'm just messing with him. Alhamdulillah. Are there any questions? And the Sheikh, he's not like, the Sheikh was dealing with evil scholars during his time. So he's writing this, and he was dealing with evil scholars literally at the time. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Asa is in here. I'll see everyone at the Black Imams Roundtable. Yes, the Black Imams Roundtable is today at 7 o'clock. That's in approximately 28 minutes, inshallah. The Shehu is like Habib for West Africa. I guess you mean like the Habib, the Ba'alawi, yes. Or is it specific to, oh, maybe I'm getting it wrong. Shehu is like Habib for West Africa. Shehu is a Hausa for Sheikh. It's the Hausa equivalent of the Arabic word Sheikh. So even now, if you know any Hausa speaking people, when they talk about their sheikh, they say shehu. That's just their word for sheikh. And they spell it like this. But it's kind of like pronounced like this. So it's written like that, but it's really pronounced like shehu. I guess if you were writing that properly in English, there'll be one of them little dash things over the E, like when they do in French. So like she, right? Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ibn Hassan. This is an excellent question right here. Assalamu alaikum. Does your scholar have to come from your lands to give rulings of authority? Short answer, yes. But let me give you the support of that. Imam Nawawi, many scholars spoke about this. Imam Nawawi addressed it. Let me find a book where I quoted. Hold on. I'm still here. I'm just looking for the book. Give me 1 second. Or is it on my desk? Give me 1 second. Hold on. Subhanallah. Where are you? Subhanallah. Where are you? Wow, that's deep. Subhanallah. I can't find it. Subhanallah. Let me look it up. Let me look it up. Be patient with me, y'all. I want to find that quote from Imam Nawawi. Amen. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Ah, here it is. Here it is. I'm going to put it in the comments. One second. Let me find the English. We broke him up into two. Imam An-Nawawi, rahimahullah, said, and this is coming from his book called Adab al-Fatwa wa Mufti wa Mustafti, which means the etiquette of the fatwa, the one giving the fatwa, and the one asking the questions, or the one asking for the fatwa. It is not permissible for a person of one area or country not aware of the customs and the circumstances of another area to issue fatwa in that place until he is fully acquainted with the people of it, their style of speaking, and what they mean by their words and expressions. And so, yeah. So it's poor adab, and it's not permissible for, number one, for us to be running all the way across the seas asking for Islamic rulings on things that are specific here to people that are not familiar with our situation. So we shouldn't be asking for it, and they should be scholarly enough not to be given it, or at least refer us back to, or now I found a book, subhanAllah. It was buried under some papers. I have to clean my desk off. MashaAllah. Example. There's an example from Imam Malik rahimahullah when a man came from another country with 40 questions, and he said la adri, and sent him back saying, yes, scholars will know better, even though he was qualified to answer the questions. Exactly. So how is it possible from scholars of Saudi to give fatwa over here? The same way that it's possible for them to say Allah exists in a place, and it's say Allah got a literal hand, and everything else they doing. So, breaking this rule is, that's easy. If they're going to do that to Allah, breaking that rule is nothing. Yeah, they should know this. And Imam Nawawi is not the only scholar that said it either. This is a well-known thing. But anyway, alhamdulillah, I need to get out of here to get ready for the Black Imams Roundtable. We're going to start in about 19 minutes, inshallah, at 7 o'clock. So make sure you come over to Masjid Muhammad page, YouTube, Facebook, and join the discussion, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. I thank all of you for joining us, and I pray that this information was beneficial. And we're still not finished with what the Sheikh had to say with regards to evil scholars. Let's recite Al-Fatiha for Sheikh Uthman. Alhamdulillah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت واستغفرك وأتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.